Bismillah, alhamdulillah, wassalatu wassalamu ala rasulullah. Assalamu alaikum, everyone. Thank you for joining us on Muslim Network TV. Let's dive right in. Today, we're going to be discussing the state of Minnesota, but a problem there that impacts people all across the country, and that's the issue of pollution. A local Muslim community is working to make sure that there is not a project established that could worsen the problem of pollution. What is this project? What's the community doing about it? What can we learn nationally about the issue of pollution in our country? To discuss this, let's bring on our special guest, Sister Inari Mohammed. She's a doctoral student studying epidemiology at the University of Minnesota. Assalamu alaikum, Ms. Mohammed. How are you?
Wa alaikum salam. I'm well, alhamdulillah. How are you?
I'm doing well, Hamza. Thank you so much for joining us. We really appreciate your time. So, give us a little more detail. What is this public works project that's going on that's got people concerned? Just what's the project? What is it, and why is it of concern?
So, the city of Minneapolis essentially wants to put all of the diesel vehicles that it owns into a small neighborhood called the East Phillips neighborhood. And the concern is that the addition of these vehicles coming in and out and stationed in that neighborhood will add additional air pollution to a community that has historically been subject to other types of pollution. So that's really, the core of the problem.
Got you. So, what is the city's explanation for this? How are they justifying this or arguing for it to happen? And then on the flip side, what's the local community doing about it? And in particular, I hear there's a mosque that's fighting back against this.
Yeah, so I can't speak, for why the city is focused only on this neighborhood, except that, it could be a logistical or, a site that's maybe convenient for them to have this project. But to really give an overview of the community, it's East Phillips is a mostly low income neighborhood located just south of downtown Minneapolis. It's extremely diverse. The majority of residents are people of color, and that includes a large indigenous community as well as a large Muslim and immigrant population. There's a masjid located in the neighborhood, as well as several other masjids in the surrounding areas. And we know that 40% of the children who live in East Phillips are below the poverty line. And there's data that shows that asthma emergency room visits among East Phillips residents is 2 to 4 times higher than the rest of the state. So we have a community that's predominantly people of color and low income, and data shows that there's higher health conditions, that could be caused by the environment, and it's unfortunate that the city, has really targeted this location to put in a project that could potentially increase air pollution.
Gotcha. So, what's the local community doing about this? I understand a letter was written addressed to the city about this, signed by some local organizations. Tell us about that.
So, a group of healthcare providers, public health professionals, and community organizations signed an open letter asking the city of Minneapolis to protect the health of East Phillips residents by not putting this project through, right? By not bringing additional pollutants into the neighborhood. And it's really to show the city that both the community does not want this project, but health professionals are also supporting the community by saying, yes, they're right to not want this project because it could increase, air pollution in their neighborhood.
Tell us more generally, Ms. Mohammed, about the problem of pollution in the United States. What are the major contributors to it? What are some of the hot spots? Just give us an overview of the state of pollution, because obviously, in some countries, it's so bad that there's just a smog, that falls over major cities. And I'm from Los Angeles originally, and we often hear about that sometimes, that smog that descends over a city. What's the state of pollution in America, generally speaking?
Um, well, I'm not I guess I can speak more towards the state of pollution in Minnesota and
Sure.
within this neighborhood specifically. Environmental pollution is really an issue of health equity because data shows. Both in Minnesota and nationwide, that communities of color tend to be more polluted because of decisions to build highways through or nearby communities of color, to locate facilities or industries that are cause pollution within communities of color. And air pollution is extremely harmful. We know that. It's been well established. In this case, in the case of this project where diesel is involved, diesel emissions can contribute to many health problems, including asthma, cardiovascular disease, lung cancer, even put people at risk for diabetes. Additionally, this type of pollution has been linked to impaired cognitive development among children and even Alzheimer's and other forms of dementia in adults. So the consequences of air pollution are really are wide reaching and really affect all levels of health.
So as you study epidemiology in the University of Minnesota, what are you learning there that might be able to help in this struggle against pollution to address it? Or just generally about epidemiology. What are you learning that you think will be helpful as you then embark upon your career? I assume working on these issues related to health and public health.
Yeah, so I think, at the core of public health is really to improve health equity, to make sure that everyone from every community is healthy. And, one of the things we saw in COVID during the initial, and still ongoing COVID pandemic is that communities of color were more likely to get sick and die from the disease, right? And that sort of same thing applies to pollution. Pollution tends to affect the health of communities of color or communities who live in poverty more. And so, as a public health professional, it's really my job and the job of all other public health professionals and healthcare workers to try to improve the health of marginalized communities by advocating for changes that move those communities towards healthier um, lives, right? And one way we do this is by really speaking out against a project like the one that's proposed for the East Phillips neighborhood, which instead of improving the health of the community, really can cause additional health problems.
Yeah. Are you getting enough support from the local community, Muslim and otherwise, in speaking out against this project, or do you need people to do more?
I think both. I think the community, especially the masjid that's in the neighborhood, has signed on to the letter and has also spoken out against this project. But we could absolutely use more voices to speak against, this project, and more voices from outside the community to come to help amplify the voices of those within the community, who have for months and for years have really tried to speak out against this
Absolutely,
issue.
absolutely. Yeah. And so I understand that it's good to hear you got the mosque involved. I think the local CAIR chapter there is involved as well, and then hopefully people other communities as well speaking up about this project and raising their voices. Well, last question for you, Ms. Mohammed: are you seeing enough Muslims studying epidemiology going into this field, or do we need more Muslim young people to pursue this line of work?
We absolutely need more young Muslims to study epidemiology. I think, again, going back to COVID, like we've seen that public health affects everybody, and but really hits marginalized communities pretty hard. And so, I would love to see more Muslims pursue careers in public health so that we can help our communities from within and really advocate for all the health issues that affect us.
Absolutely. Well, thank you, Ms. Mohammed, for your time. We wish you well with your remaining studies. Look forward to having you back, calling you Dr. Mohammed one day, inshallah. May Allah
Inshallah.
grant you continued success with your efforts and also cause the situation with the project to work out, well for the community. So thank you for having for joining
Yeah.
us.
Thank you for having me on.
Absolutely. And thank you all for watching this little segment on Muslim Network TV. We'll see you next time, inshallah. Until then, assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.